Welcome back to episode 85 of Warrior's Den, brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions since 2013. So today's episode is with UTKM instructor, assistant instructor Petra Foerster, and she's currently a UTKM green belt, soon to be blue belt, judo black belt, and recently promoted BJJ blue belt. And she also recently wrote a series on the blog, which I'm going to do a full podcast just on later on, called Doomed to Repeat, because Petra grew up in East Germany before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And she's starting to notice some of the things that our current Western governments are doing are starting to look a lot like the authoritarian communist regimes, or as they were taught, socialist regimes. It's all very gray. But first, Urban Tactics Krav Maga, you can support this podcast and our blog by going to utkmblog.com, clicking on the Support Us link, and you can either simply donate to us and support it, because we like that, and you'll feel great, maybe not. And you can also go to utkmu.com and you can get access to our curriculum. Novice, beginner and novice, so all the way up to orange belt, is available. So if you just want to supplement your current Krav Maga training, if you're an instructor out there who wants to see how we structured our program, if you want to practice as a UTKM student because you're away, you can take a look at the details of the curriculum on utkmu.com. You can also support us for free by following us on Urban Tactics Krav Maga on Instagram, Urban Tactics Cam on Twitter. Although I prefer you follow us on Instagram because Twitter is a cesspool of shenanigans. You can also follow us on Facebook, Urban Tactics Krav Maga. If you want to come train with us in person, we have classes now. Woot! You can come sign up at urbantacticskm.com, and you can sign up on the new student link for a free trial class. And I don't know if you caught it in the other episodes recently that I was saying we are taking blog submissions. So if you want a free 3 months access to UTKM we are submitting a submission. What we're looking for is self-defense situations you are in, whether you did well or poorly, law enforcement experience, military experience, etc. Minimum 500 words. What I'm looking for is, what did you learn? What did you do well? What did you do wrong? How did your training kick in? And you can get 3 months free UTKM. If you want to remain anonymous, you can. If you want to have your name out there, you can also do that. All published submissions will get 3 months free. You can submit submissions 3 months of UTKMU for free, and all submissions to info@urbantacticscanada.com. Again, if you tell your story, other people will know they're not alone, or they can learn from you, or whatever. So again, if you feel it's important to put it out there, we'd love to publish it on the blog. Minimum 500 words. Do try to have some basic grammatical English structure, because our editors can only do so much. Not all submissions will be published. We'll take a look at the submissions, so you can send them to info@urbantacticscanada.com, and you could be in the next series of stories. I already forgot what I called it. It was last week's episode. Let's take a look. Tales From, that's it. So first one, blog post series, Tales From, Volume 1. So I'd like to do a lot of volumes of those, so please submit your stories. And what else? Oh yeah, if you're listening to this anytime soon, don't forget, we do the Canadian Firearms Safety Course and Canadian Restricted Firearms Safety Courses. You can check that out on urbantacticscam.com. Sign up fast. I do them about every 2 months right now. They fill up fast, limited space. So check us out if you need to get your firearms license. I recommend, if you're Canadian, to do it sooner than later due to politics and the stupidity around that. So I would get your licenses as soon as you can. Also, you need them if you ever want to be a UTKM green belt. And for our current students listening, just so you know, we're going to have lots of testing coming up now that things are open again. So keep your eyes out for that. If you are listening to this, we need helpers. So back to the podcast. So again, Petra, our UTKM assistant instructor, training with us since 2015. She trained briefly previously at another school until it closed down. She had originally started her judo path in Eastern Germany when she was young, and she continued her martial arts journey when she ended up moving here. And so in this episode, we talk about her experience with martial arts and judo and Krav Maga, her experience a little bit growing up, mental health considerations, politics as always, and because I did want to talk about what she was writing in her blog post, because I think it's important to know in a Western country it can happen here too again. So stop putting your heads in blindfolders and pretending like you don't need to pay attention because it's not interesting and I don't care what's going on because it doesn't affect my life. Yes, it does. So anyways, you can listen to this conversation that me and Petra had on we recorded it on July 1st, which is Canada Day, and enjoy. Krav Maga is not just a self-defense system, it is a way of life. Warrior's Den is a podcast for Kravists, fighters, martial artists, warriors, politicians, and general citizens. Consider this. The society that separates scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. Thucydides. Your host, Jonathan Fader, talks to guests in an open and uncensored format about their fights, their philosophies, and their lives. No topic is taboo, and the conversation may start in one place and end in another. As the quote suggests, you cannot separate the warrior from the politics and the world around them, as a true warrior must be a student in all forms of art and science.
You're listening to The Warrior's Day. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions.
Welcome back. I am here today with Petra Foerster, UTKM Green Belt, Assistant Instructor, Judo Black Belt, and now BJJ Blue Belt. How are you today?
Good. I mean, it's a day off, so I could technically sleep in, but if you have a cat, you're never able to sleep in. It's always feed o'clock for him at some point.
Yeah.
So
wake me up, feed me. Yeah. So let's start with the question everyone's waiting to hear. How did you get into martial arts in the first place?
That's a very easy question to answer. I think the more interesting question is, why did I stick with it? When I was 6 years old, 1986, in September, I started school, grade 1. And my parents said, well, okay, the kid needs to do something else. Not only school, there needs to be a counterbalance. And the closest thing to where I lived was this little judo dojo. It's hard to believe because the town I'm from is really small. It's a very rural area.
Whereabouts? It's in Germany, obviously.
It's in the boonies. It's at the triple border between Poland, Germany, and the Czech Republic. So if you look at the globe, it's very easy to find.
Yeah, right there at the border.
So my siblings did judo before that, but they didn't really stick with it. Once the teenage years hit, they were like, not that important anymore. I need to do other stuff.
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah. And, so my parents decided, okay, the other kids did judo, so let's put her into the club as well. Yeah. And this is how I started with judo. And I had one class that I was sitting there to observe, but it was not really negotiable. Like nowadays, it's always like the kids come to so many different sports, and the parents are, so what do you like? And do you think you can do that? And with me was like, okay, that's it, you're going.
Do it now.
And then this is how I started. Twice a week, Tuesday and Thursdays, for 2 hours from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. And I stuck with it for, I don't know why.
How long were you doing it back then?
Back in Germany, I was doing it for 16 years, from 1986 to 2002.
Yeah.
And in 2002, I graduated from university, and life happened. I moved away.
Life happened.
Yeah, and but I was also, my body was pretty tired and burned out. I had been doing judo for 16 years, pretty much nonstop.
Saying judo is hard on the body?
Yeah, it's really like, it's a whole body conditioning. You're being thrown all the time. And break falls are great. You will really learn them when you're doing judo so long. But yeah, it takes a toll at some point. And nowadays, when they're here educating teachers, and you go through the dojo assistant and dojo instructor course with Judo Canada, they're really focusing and really paying attention to what you can teach to children and what you should not be teaching.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, children are still growing. It's still not as hardened as an adult body. It's still like comparably softer.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be doing all the kind of crap. But yeah, no, that wasn't working. When your teacher, when your sensei said, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing. I mean, nobody cared.
Back then, yeah. Now, when did you come to Canada? We'll get into the teaching thing, don't worry.
I came to Canada in December 2012. It was December the 6th. I remember the date.
December the 6th.
December the 6th.
Infamous date.
Yes.
How did your martial arts journey continue when you were here?
I mean, when I came to Canada, first focus was, of course, find an apartment, find a job to pay for everything. So it took me a while to find jobs. When you're new to Canada, there is nobody waiting for you at the airport and say, "Hey, great paying job here for you." You really have to start from the bottom again, from scratch, and you have to just suck it up and go through a lot of shitty jobs till you find a job that's finally starting to pay for everything you need.
Yeah.
So when I came here, I had money saved up to make sure I can survive.
Yeah.
And if you don't have Canadian work experience, it's really not easy to find a job.
Yeah.
It's all about connections.
Same for Canadians, not just immigrants. That's just how it works.
Yeah, no, connections are always important. But if you don't have any Canadian work experience, it's a strange thing. But employers are really sticky about it.
Yeah.
They want to see you have worked prior for a Canadian employer. But I mean, I made it through. I'm still here.
Yeah. Obviously.
I always had like a chunk of money put aside just in case it didn't work out, so that I could still book a flight back home.
Yeah, the immigrant life. Like one foot in, one foot out, and then you stay, right?
Yeah, but I was lucky enough, and now I have a job, and it pays my bills. It pays for everything.
Yeah, and then when did you jump back into the martial arts then?
That was, I think, in 2015. I was still living with my roommate, and we were really good friends, and we're still really good friends. And she was on that Groupon site. She was trying to find something Groupon. She could do. I know, Groupon. And she also tripped over this ad for Krav Maga. And I heard about Krav Maga, but I wasn't really 100% sure what it is. So, but
most people aren't still, as you know.
But I thought, that's so cool. I always wanted to try that. So, there was a gym downtown Vancouver. That offered that.
Who is no longer around because our gym is so much better. Everyone is trying. No, I'm kidding. I don't actually know why they. Don't name names, by the way.
No. I won't name names.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at some point they discontinued, but that to a later point. So yes, I saw the ad. I Googled the address. I just showed up for one of the training sessions, and I just enjoying the training. I also noticed how much out of shape I was.
Well, yeah, that'll be if you take long time off, right?
And like when I left judo in 2002, because again life happened.
Yeah.
I was in pretty good shape. I had no issues training for 5 days a week, 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
Doing all the drills, even in the heat. We didn't have air conditioning. And with the gi, it's very, very hard. Like the gis are super heavy for judo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did my first class, Krav Maga. And again, I noticed how much out of shape I was. But there was even more incentive for me to do something because I felt that, no, that cannot be happening.
Yeah.
So, and I always say I was unemployed at the time, and I was really lucky at that because I felt sore for a week. My whole body was in pain. I was just living on the couch and occasionally crawling to the washroom, but that's it. I couldn't do much. And I was pretty mad at myself because I thought, again, no, that's not how it is. I want to be more active again. I want to be do more, be capable of doing more. And yeah, so I signed up for Krav Maga with this gym downtown, and I really enjoyed it. Again, I didn't really know it yet, so but again, for me, it was most important, I think, getting back into the game and doing something, working out. Yeah,
that's good. Now, if anyone who doesn't know Petra, she's now doing 3 hours at a time, sometimes 4 hours at a time. So, and don't beat yourself up so much. There was a 12, 13, 14-year gap in between, and people often forget when you get older, you can't do as much. Not that I was an athlete, but I can't do as much as I used to. I can if I have to, but it's like I don't want to. Now and then they closed, right? And then you found us.
Yeah, I was asking a friend who went to the same gym in downtown.
Yeah.
I asked him, hey, they're discontinuing the program. Where could I go? And he had 2 suggestions for me. He said there's another one in downtown. But then he also said, if you really want to do Krav Maga, you should go to the one in Richmond.
Yeah, so we had a good reputation then, too.
So this is how I showed up in Richmond.
Yeah.
I think I emailed, and one of the instructors then emailed me back like a week later or so. It took him a while. Yeah. In between, I had shown up anyways.
Yeah, I'm much better at that. If I don't email it within 24 hours, there's usually something crazy going on.
Yeah, and I had one trial session, and I liked it. And to add on to this with martial arts, I tried different stuff in between. I tried, for example, CrossFit and all kinds of other stuff like mountain biking. But it's just not my cup of tea.
You're actually probably more likely to get injured mountain biking than you are doing martial arts anyway.
Well, I mean, it helps when you know how to break fall.
Yeah, that is true. Although if you're going like 60 mile an hour downhill,
no, that's true. And also, if it is a stony road and there's like tree roots, the best break fall. If you still fall on a root or on a rock, you can still hurt yourself pretty badly.
Yeah. So transition, because someone told you if you really want to learn Krav Maga. Yeah. So that's the thing when students walk in. A lot of the same thing. I don't know what Krav Maga is. Some people have an idea of what it is, and there it can be difficult to teach because if what I'm teaching or what you're teaching is not what they thought it's going to be, they leave with a bad taste in their mouth. But that's empty your cup, people.
Yes.
No, but transitioning from there to UTKM, what was that like? The difference?
What I liked about, the training was a little bit different. Yeah. With the old gym, we did sparring too, but not to that extent. And they were also trying to include a lot of other things. Like at some point, a Kali guy came in to teach a little bit of footwork.
I see the cat's gone after my microphone.
Yeah. Yeah. So at some point, Rambo might join us here on the table. Yeah. I also found the curriculum not as structured.
Yeah.
So at some point, they had, for example, gun disarm very early on.
Yeah.
The knife stuff that they did. I mean, the drilling is important, but how they drilled it I was not very happy about that, because if you do this kind of drilling that always just redirecting but not following through, if that kicks in a real life scenario, you're just screwed.
Yeah. Well, it says, and that's nothing against them. It's common in I really think it's to do with the fact Israelis are not the best managers. Sorry, Israelis, but you're not. You guys are great innovators, but when you get managed stuff, when they go global, they really don't like to manage stuff. And the organizations that have gone a structured route have done like this rigid, do what we say, doesn't work. Because Krav Maga is supposed to be somewhat flexible. That's why it should be principle based. And a lot of people who are instructors don't understand what they're doing because they do it for a little bit, take a course, start teaching it. And depending on the Krav Maga schools around the world, you'll get ones that are like, I want to teach you how to defend yourself, but they don't develop the basic skill sets of the students. Like that's something traditional martial arts got right, was we need to build you up. But it's on the larger organizations, when they do that, they're withholding too much information, right? Then it's like, that doesn't make sense. I like to think I found a decent balance between professional application at the higher levels and, hey, if you show that you can build your body and mind, then we can do the other stuff. But otherwise, you're not serious, not training, so you're going to be down there. And then the drilling, like if you don't train the nervous system, that's how I've been framing it lately. If you don't train your nervous system, you're not going to be able to defend yourself, right?
And they also were not very, like, with our defense classes, there's also lots of principles, and we talk a lot about theories, the whole, the color code and all these things, that, as you already said, the nervous system. And they were really more focusing on the
aggression,
physical stuff, not so much on what comes with it.
Yeah, that's common too. Like if you go train with a lot of the Israelis or just their cohorts, or even in Eastern Europe, it's just go. I think that My theory on that is that because of its origins, military and police, it naturally attracts athletic people. When you get athletic people who are tough naturally without being trained, we can train you most of the time. Those people don't want to hear the theory. They don't want to know the why. But then, my response to that is, hey, have you ever looked at special force guys? They know the theory. They have to know the theory. You can't just know the tough, right? But the Krav Maga instructors who teach the special force guys, they're not actually teaching them theory. They have other classes for that, like tactical theory and all that. Well, if you're building a Krav program from the ground up, we're working with civilians, so we have to put it in there, like to understand the nervous systems. Like if you are in certain special forces in Israel, you're going to learn all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, I don't know, we're recording on Canada Day, and last week, I think, the building in Florida collapsed, right? You didn't hear about that?
I did not hear.
Yeah, a whole building collapsed, like an apartment building. And as normal, the search and rescue team, Israeli search and rescue team, they always offer help in emergencies. And they went there. And they're essentially special forces, if it's the one I'm thinking of, or the subgroups and stuff. And I was just looking at an interview with CNN, which surprisingly, they had the Israeli guy on. And they said the CNN guy was like, hey, you were working all night. I see the dust on your boots. Now I can see he's wearing a clean uniform because he put it on for PR. But the CNN guy's like, he was searching all night. The Israeli guy's like, yeah, we were working all night. We found some people. And the CNN guy interrupts him and is like, you mean bodies, right? And the Israeli guy's like, no, we found people. Unfortunately, they're not alive. And it was like, he's been trained on PR. Like, he's a colonel who is not just search and rescue. That guy knows medical. He could probably do field surgery if he needs to. He has been trained on PR, right? When you learn these special forces, they have all this other training. But the Krav guys, they teach them just that. I have you for 2-3 hours. I'm going to kick the crap out of you. Focus on the physical. And then they forget the things that actually make it so good. It's the holistic thing that these special force soldiers are getting outside of that. And when when the special force guys who are also Krav Maga start teaching, they teach differently sometimes. When they're teaching civilians, they teach theory, they teach concepts, they teach that. And that's not coming out of the Krav specific programs. From what I can see, it's coming out of the fact they were special forces. And then the fact, they have university level English at that level easily. And then if you're an officer, you have to go to university. And in Israeli universities, half the courses are going to be in English. So if you don't take English. So I could think someone watching that clip is going to be like, well, he just doesn't understand the CNN guy's English. It's like, no, CNN guy is trying to play the words for illicit emotion. The other guy understands English just fine. Like, he knew exactly what he was saying. So I think that's what's missing, I think, in the Krav world, is that everything has been disconnected from one another. And, if I go teach a seminar, depending on where you're going, let's say I go to a school and they're expecting me to kick the crap out of them. It's like, okay, but every instructor can do that. Like, I want to see where you guys are at. What do you guys know? I want to leave something memorable, because if I just come and kick the crap out of you for a 3-hour seminar, it's like, well, did you really learn anything? That's a lot of me, though, from my experience in the Army. But it's common, like, I don't know what Krav Maga is. And people's idea of what it is based on either YouTube or what their first instructor taught them. So I don't know what you think about that, because you've been part of the process over the last few years.
Well, I mean, I was a total empty cup when I came in, and even with the first gym where I went to, I was just soaking it in, and I did it there for maybe a year, not even a full year, I don't think so. And then I came to UTKM, and I was still an empty cup, because I thought I still don't know enough. I just start putting my toe into the water, and there is still so much more out there. And then with the whole theory coming in, and also blog posts, I started to become more interested in strategy, tactics, and I'm not an army person. So my parents were pacifists. How I grew up, not a lot of military or law enforcement input. It's just not my family.
Same here.
We go back to farmers and tradespeople, and that's pretty much it. And in Eastern Germany, it was I mean, you had people serving in the army for a certain amount of time, but it was just not very present.
Yeah.
At least not for me. And if it was present, then very often was a negative context, like stuff that happened during Eastern Germany in the history, where they had sent the military in to calm down riots, for example.
Yeah.
So it always had a very bad aftertaste.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me to pick up Krav Maga, I didn't really had that on my to-do list, on my bucket list, but I liked it. And I also find that this whole theory part is helping me way more understanding and also applying it.
Yeah.
If I had to, of course. I always try to avoid conflict as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the idea behind the theory. Is I was finding like people just weren't getting it, because the what if this, what if that, is because they don't understand the theory. If you understand that the principles in the theory, then you don't need to ask a million what if questions. You just frame it like things are going to go wrong. You need to figure it out. Here's the basic techniques. Here's the mentality. Here's the strategy. Go. Right. And I found it makes it a lot easier for people, the ones who are willing to listen. Because some people are like, I don't want to do. Why are you talking so much?
Yeah, and then you have those people who already come in they have a certain idea in their head, and they're kind of disappointed because it's not playing out as they played it in their head.
Yeah.
I also, back in Germany when I was doing judo, one of my first judo clubs, they also did self-defense. They also offered Japanese jiu-jitsu, so that's also a little bit different. But it lacked the concept. It lacked all this theory behind it. So we were learning techniques, but I always was wondering, how did I get there? Because I mean, yes, it can happen to you that you're being jumped and shit hits the fan right away. But I mean, usually there is a process to it.
Yeah.
And they totally skipped that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this isn't specific to martial arts. This is teaching in general. It's like, I'm sure you've had instructors that are just there to teach versus they really understand and are passionate about it. Like, I'm not good at math, probably. Well, one, because I'm lazy, but I'll be honest with that. But I didn't learn it because no one made it interesting and no one forced me to. So a lot of kids learn it because they're forced to, but they don't understand it. And I remember asking in high school a teacher once, like, here's the formula. I'm like, okay, but why does it work? Like, how does it work? And they're like, that's too complicated to understand. And it's not true though, because if you're looking now on the internet for math, you're seeing all these like programs and visual things where they're giving you visual aids to explain how it works. And either it's because the teacher doesn't give a shit, or because they don't really understand enough. Because a lot of high school math teachers are not even really math teachers. They just did math because they were okay at it, but they don't really understand it. And the same is for a lot of self-defense in martial arts. It's, I'm teaching you this technique because here's the technique. And then everyone calls it self-defense. And then to me, I'm getting sick of this. It's not specific to today. It's been always, because humans are all involved. But as life and death conflict is less and less acceptable in the Western world, at least, people are losing touch with violence a lot. And then they give you techniques that don't really work, and then you explain why. Well, that's the technique we learned. So it's you see this all over the martial arts. I'm going to get in a lot of fights in the near future with martial artists about self-defense. Like jiu-jitsu guys are notorious. I'm teaching a self-defense seminar, but are you? I'm not really sure you are. I think you're teaching jiu-jitsu and calling it self-defense.
I had a conversation with judo people, and they also, for whatever, I don't really understand, no, because they're really smart and like really good and have been doing judo for so long, but they didn't know the difference between fighting and self-defense. Yeah. It's just baffled me, and I just gave them the explanation for it, and they, yeah, right, there is a difference. Yeah. Before that, they weren't sure about it.
You know, that I've been emphasizing that a lot lately. You probably noticed, and it's because people don't understand the difference because they watch UFC or they watch professional fighting, and then they're like, okay. And you know what Ron Rotem was saying on the last podcast? Yeah, if I take a fighter who's trained fighter and teach them self-defense, they're going to be hard for even a lifelong Krav Maga person who hasn't done professional fighting. That's the truth. because they're the physically gifted people. They have fast reflexes. They know how to use their body. They understand conflict on a one-on-one basis. But then you start giving them the strategy, and you tweak the tools for the street, and you give them reflexive drills like 360 on top of what they already know, and they're a nightmare. But for most people, that's not what you need to learn. You're going to learn it. You're going to learn how to punch and kick and box, but you don't need to be an expert. You just need to know how to stop that initial conflict and run out. You don't need to go 10 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. It's not going to happen.
None of us would survive that.
Yeah. Now, judo, because you got back into it, now you're a black belt, because you were a brown belt when you came, right? So how has that process been, getting back into judo to now?
It took me a while to get back into judo. Back in Germany, I was getting ready for my black belt. Then I got injured, so I had to abort the whole mission. So I thought, okay, that's it. I'm a brown belt, fine. I came to Germany. I started with Krav Maga, and at some point, because I had done judo for so long, it's just a big part of me. And I just love the complexity of the techniques, where most beginners are always confused. Okay, where do I put my foot again?
I'm still confused in judo sometimes. Where does my foot go?
Then at some point I just thought, okay, I want to start judo again. I was asking around what's a good judo club, and then a friend took me to a judo club close to Metrotown, and I tried them out. But location was not ideal, and the whole commute was not perfect for me, so I was just not a good fit. It was also rather big club, so it was big classes, and I usually enjoy if a person watches me, gives me pointers to make sure I'm doing it right. I mean, I pick up techniques rather quickly, and I have done judo for so long, so it's pretty much body memory. I just have to, my body has changed, so I have to adapt to that.
Yeah. Welcome to life, right?
I know. Also, I'm over 25, so it's just not getting easier.
Yeah.
And then I found a judo club very close to where I live, and it's a small club, and they're super supportive. I'm now helping out with the kids' classes.
I saw the schedule you posted. You're
Yes.
like 4 days a week or something.
Well, I'm teaching the kids' classes on Wednesdays, and then on Friday night and on Saturday at noon, I'm just helping out running the classes, and there's a lot of beginners showing up, so we try to help them as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, judo is a hard thing to start if you have no martial arts experience.
Yeah, just the whole breakfall situation. If you start learning breakfalls as an adult, that will take a moment.
Well, I remember I did judo. I did a police judo club for a bit when I came back from the army, before I really, really got into Krav Maga. I was I was doing Krav, and they're just like, okay, you're going to do front rolls, like leaping ones. And I'm like, the hell? Like, because I'd never done that. And it's just like, I had vertigo and all that. It's like, it's a hard thing. It's like, I guess we're doing it. Luckily, I'm just confident. I'm like, okay, we're doing it, no problem. But for a lot of people, that can be very, very intimidating, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in our classes, right? When we're teaching break falls, it's just the fear of falling. It's just, as an adult, it's just so much bigger, and you always think, what if? Yeah. And for the kids too, just do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you'd be surprised, like you wouldn't be surprised because you can see it. Like the other day, you weren't there, but we had a bunch of new students, and we were doing headlock defense, which requires break fall. And I had like 3 experienced students, and the rest are all newer students. I was like, okay, I have to teach it's one of the more complicated initial self-defense techniques. And I realized some of the people didn't even know break falls, and I had to I couldn't spend the time detail. I'm like, okay, just don't post, but they pick it up pretty quick. If they're open-minded and know how to use their body, it's actually surprising for a lot of people, because they see what everyone else is doing. But if they see hesitancy and they see like everyone's brand new, it's harder. But you get that group thing going. Like same with the roll when I did judo for a bit. Everyone's doing it. Well, I guess I'm going to do it. Because a lot of people are in their heads like, I can't do it, and then I have to do it.
Yeah. Right. Also, they don't want to embarrass themselves. They think they might look stupid or whatever. But that's not the point. I mean, we all start at some point, and we just go from there. I mean, if you never start, you will never learn. Yeah,
basically. Now, what was the process like getting the black belt for judo? Because they're very traditional as compared to, say, Krav, right?
Yeah, but they're not as bad in quotation marks as Germany. When I was getting ready for my black belt in Germany, I had to know the whole Gokyo. So that's to explain what the Go-Kyo is. Go is the Japanese word for 5, and Kyo is just the student grade.
Yeah.
So for my black belt, I had to know and how to execute 40 different throws, all kind of ground stuff, pins, holds, chokes, arm bars. I had to show self-defense. I had to show some techniques or learn some techniques that were older, that were not in any official books. There was just sparse literature for that. And and doing the kata. Judo has, I think, 7 katas, and I had to do the Nagano kata. So I was working on those. And then here for Canada, you have to make sure that you're signed up, that you're a member of, that you have a Judo Canada membership card. You have to sign up every year. And for me, because of the age bracket I was in, I didn't have to compete. Just me being a living, breathing brown belt gave me points. And once I had enough points, I went to Steveston to do the kata clinic there to learn the Nagano kata, which is one of the main katas.
Yeah.
And so I showed the kata there, and I also had to do the first set of the Juno kata because I'm a woman, and the Juno kata is more self-defense oriented. It is, of course, very, very different from Krav Maga, but I just thought, okay, just
do it.
just do it. No discussions. That's what they want you to do. Just do it.
Do not question the 100 years of tradition.
In Steveston, the guys there were older instructors and senseis, and but super supportive again, and I did quite well. For me, it was also important to represent my judo club well. Yeah. It's just this whole Bushido code thing. I know it is rather new, not as old as they make us believe, but it's just, we want to, because they were so supportive of me, want to make sure, okay, make them look good.
Yeah.
And so it was not as complicated as it would have been for me in Germany when I was getting ready there.
Yeah.
I had to train a lot more in Germany.
Yeah. Now, because that's interesting, obviously, you don't have Krav experience in Germany. And back then, I don't think there was Krav in Germany. No. I think it probably late 90s, it probably started showing up. The martial arts attitudes in different countries is radically different. If I'm teaching in Eastern Europe or a lot of countries Krav, I have to run a more aggressive class. Because if I don't, they're going to think something's wrong. I can still do the theory, but just have to push them harder. Versus Canada, if I do that, I'm not going to get people coming back, right? And I do not want a meathead gym personally, but maybe explain the difference, how you felt, just the attitudes between, say, doing judo in Canada and doing judo. Now, granted, it was the 80s and 90s, so it's a little rougher, but
yeah, I mean, judo is a Japanese martial arts. It is a rather young martial arts, not as old as others, like jiu-jitsu or I'm not sure about karate, but there is martial arts that have been around for way more 100 years than judo.
Okinawan karate probably quite a while.
Yeah.
But modern karate it's all because of the Japanese Empire, right, in the late 1800s, and the British getting involved, and then that's where a lot of the ethos around Japanese martial arts actually really came from our modern beliefs. But if you not to go too sidetracked, there was that really good series in Japanese. I forgot the history. Of the unification of Japan in the 1600s, and you saw they screwed each other over all the time. There's no Bushido code.
Whatever gives you the power, whatever makes you survive, and you win. That's perfect.
Still, it was Japanese culture is very honor based even back then, but it's a lot more loose than we think of it.
Yeah, it's not as strict, or not as much Bushido focused as they try to make us believe.
Yeah, Hollywood.
But yeah, I know. So judo is a Japanese martial arts. So, and Japanese tradition is very there's a strong hierarchy. So when your sensei says you do something, you do it. If they tell you jump, you only ask how high.
Yeah.
So there was no discussion. There is no negotiation, and it even translated over into your personal life. I remember one occasion. I was maybe 14, 15 at the time, and one of my fellow judo friend, he was out with his dad, and he had his first sip of beer. Well, in Germany, the relationship to beer is a little bit different than, of course, here in Canada. Yeah. And but my sensei got wind of it, and he challenged the kid to a kumite, which is an open fight.
Go.
And the end of the story is that the kid ended up, I think, with a broken rib. So, I mean, that's just a big no-no.
Yeah.
I mean, now, of course, it can't happen. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back then it was very strict, and you did as you were told. And for you to progress through the ranks, you really had to perform well. You had to show what was asked for you to show. I mentioned already the Gokyo, the 5 sets of 8 throws. So for my yellow belt test, I had to show 8 throws and the pins and all the ground stuff that belonged to it. Orange, there was another set of 8 throws, so I had to show a total of 16 techniques, and it always added up when you went through the ranks. And I find here in Canada, it's a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah. Canadian way.
Yeah, so I always have to remind myself, it's not Germany. It's not Eastern Germany. Calm down. But yeah, so it's very often, it's just another milestone. They're showing their understanding to break falls. They're showing understanding for Vandori, for some techniques. And then they're getting promoted. And for me back then, we always had a designated date, usually in the wintertime around close to Christmas, where we had testing. So a board member came in and was very strict, and everybody was nervous. And we had to perform in front of this person, and we had to show that we know the techniques.
Yeah.
So it always made us feel special too, because we passed the test. We were good enough to now wear an orange belt or a green belt then.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Softer Canadians. It's I was saying in class the other day about that Canadians don't really understand other cultures very well. They think they do, but they don't, and then they don't even know their own culture very well anymore. Yeah. But the martial arts world is always interesting, because even say here, from one gym to another, there's different complete cultures depending on how the instructor wants to go. Like some gyms are just meathead, go, which I don't like. I don't think it's smart. From professional fighting, I don't think that's a smart way to train anymore. We only have one body, and you got to make it last. And if you go that sort of just kick the crap out of each other, you're going to have a shorter life. You're going to have much more injuries. If you're a professional fighter, it's you might be able to do it for a bit, but it's going to be tough for sure.
I also don't like looking back. You were not allowed to ask many questions.
Yeah.
And now when I'm teaching the kids...
Why?
Well, that's inevitable with the kids, of course.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the younger kids, they're just soaking it up often. But with the older kids, the teenagers, if they ask questions, or I encourage them to make their own decisions, and I like to have the conversation with them, just because you don't want to drill them into robots.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, Eastern Germany was also... just how the whole system worked. I mean, it was socialism back then when I started judo. It was just like following the instructions. Don't ask questions. Don't think for yourself. And I like to encourage the kids to think for themselves and ask questions, because I don't want to go down that road. Because I remember how long it took me to get out of this very strict way of thinking and be more confident, be more independent, and use my head for actual thinking and asking questions.
It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Well, we saw over this last year, most people are still not okay with asking questions, and the people that were asking appropriate questions were being called nuts, and now we're finding out, no, they were right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting with the questions thing. Like, I like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference, because, I'm not huge into that book. I watched the movie. But they created that computer to answer the question of the universe, and the answer was 42.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm this is in my head the last few weeks, so I'm like, this is a good time to talk about it. And people are like, what the hell? We waited 1 million years for this. It's because you didn't ask the right question.
Mm-hmm.
So on the matter of the questions, like, people often will be like, there's no such thing as a stupid question, and I'm like, well, actually there is. But if you don't ask questions, then you're never going to get towards the answer. And I think it's really, you need to teach people how to ask a question. And because so many cultures are taught, don't question, don't think, don't trust your elders, blah, blah, blah. When they're allowed to ask questions, they don't know ask questions. I mean, I'm sure you've been in a situation. It's quite human. It's normal that you ask someone a question and they give you an answer. Like, that's not the answer. And you'll be like, both parties get frustrated. But the reason is you don't know enough about the thing to ask the kind of question that you need to ask in order to get the right question. You know, that's what I taught. Like, science is a large percent of science is failing, and they never want to admit it. That 80%, 90% of the history of science is failure and making mistakes because they're doing an experiment where they ask the wrong question. And so they keep asking the same wrong question. They keep getting the wrong answer. And then some along the line, after everyone's already disproved that thing, they come back and ask the right question to that same thing. We find out they were wrong all along. And I think we're seeing that a lot this year. I don't want to get too down that rabbit hole on this one because I'm quite angry about an experience I had this week with regards to that exact situation. You're not asking the right questions. So when it comes to martial arts, first of all, I would like to say the stupidest question is the instructor just spent the entire time in depth explaining it, and you ask a question that is easy to answer if you were paying attention. That's a stupid question because now you're just being disrespectful, or you failed to acknowledge to yourself, because it's not always about respect, that you have a learning difficulty, and that's fine, but you need to put extra effort, and it sucks for that person. Too bad. Otherwise, it's just painful for you and painful for the other person. But other than that, it's like a process. Like, you need to build up your base knowledge. I'm sure you know with Krav Maga, my answer is usually you need to come and train more because a lot of those questions will get answered. You're just asking for too much right now. You need to get your head around the fundamentals, and then you can start learning how to do it. Right? Same for judo. When you understand the fundamentals, you can start asking questions that will further develop stuff in the right direction. The teaching thing there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, teaching is also helpful understanding stuff better. So when students ask questions, it also helps me to rethink how am I teaching. Because for me, I have been doing judo for a real long time. I've been now doing Krav for 5 years. I'm losing track. Yeah. And I'm used to a lot of things, and I understand it on I think on a good level. And because I have judo experience, I know how to move my body. So many questions don't even occur to me because I just automatically already move that way I'm supposed to move. Yeah. And then when people ask me questions, I try to take that step back and try to find a way to explain it to them so that it sinks in. But you're totally right. Sometimes people have to ask the questions, 10 times till it sinks in. And sometimes I just think, just do it. Yeah. When you're doing it, you will also figure out what works and what doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, that's true. Like, some students I know, they just need to do. Some students I could explain it a million times. They're not going to get it until they just do their tactile learners. And as an instructor, you need to figure out, okay, is this a person that I need to just tell them to do it? Or is this a person that I need to explain it to? Depending on what they're doing. Of course, if they're catastrophically bad, then we got to fix that. But yeah, if someone, like 20 people keep asking the same question, the instructor also has to realize I need to change how I'm teaching this so that it's clearer, so that people ask that question less, because obviously it's something I'm doing wrong. That's why I actually started talking more in my teaching, and I developed that, because if I kept doing it the way traditionally I was taught to teach Krav Maga, it was just like I wanted to bang my head on the wall because people were not getting stuff, and I just was not seeing the right results. So I changed to my obnoxious style now that some people like, some people hate.
I'm fine with it. I like it. It's always very informative.
Yeah. Depends on the week.
It depends on the week, of course. And but I have to admit, it's also fun to watch people who are there for the first time.
Yeah. What the hell is wrong with this guy?
When you see their faces, and it's just very entertaining for us who've been there for a while. Yeah. But no, it's part of it, of the learning process. I'm fine with it. I don't. I'm not caring about it. I just appreciate more input because being new to Canada, there's lots of things I don't know. Yeah. How things work. Right. I'm still just rolling with the punches and do my research, try to figure out how stuff is done. Yeah. And then just do it. Yeah. But I still have a lot of stuff to learn about the history of Canada, and I also understand BC is not Quebec, so there's differences there too.
Completely different.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just always input. for me.
On that topic, I always found it annoying. Like, governments are like, why don't you know how to do stuff? And citizens are like, why don't you know how to do stuff? And I'm talking to people who are born and raised here, and I'm like, why don't you know how to do stuff? And it's because governments aren't teaching people how the system works. The organizations barely teach people, like, hey, you do realize you're bringing in people with all different languages, and they're better at it now, in BC at least. I don't know about the other provinces. You kind of need to give them the important information in their language, and then you can encourage them to learn English as they go. Though that part's lacking nowadays a little bit, but like just from a practical sense, like you need to give them the materials so that they can understand it, but work them towards you should be speaking English within a few years, at least a little bit. Some people don't even bother now because there's so many groups of certain ethnic things. But I'm like, I see that as a failure of the system more than anything. But it's not specific to immigrants, which has focused on it, and they still fail. It's like, again, I know people, like, a good example is the hospitals, is that the Asian community, which is a large community here, if you come from China or you come from Taiwan, like, they don't really, my understanding is they don't really have clinics. You just go to the hospital for everything. Well, that's not how our medical system works. You're supposed to go to the hospital if it's an emergency or you've been told to go to the hospital. So it burdens the ERs with people who don't need to be there. They could have, if it's in the middle of the day, they can just go to a clinic. Or if it's something that can wait, you call your doctor and go tomorrow, go to a walk-in clinic. And I'm like, it's like the system isn't teaching people, and you guys are complaining that it's burdened. That's a really simple way to do it. Is you just say, hey, you go to a clinic for this, you go to the ER for this, you go to your regular doctor for that, go to a specialist for this. Please try not to mix it up because it costs everyone money, and then you get worse results. Like right now, the medical system's collapsing, and they blame it on COVID, and it's like, no, it's because you were poorly managing it before. The good question was, you always have to look at what was being said and done before the controversy, so that you can actually get away from the insane politics and realize, no, our paramedics were being treated like crap in BC before the pandemic. And our medical system wasn't having doctors before the pandemic. And we don't have enough MRIs before the pandemic. And they all said, well, it's a pandemic. Well, no, it's a cover. Right? Because too many people don't actually understand how it works. They can't question correctly, back to that topic. Right? So like, say, martial arts. How many bullshit martial artists are out there? For so many years, you go to the dojo in your town and that was it, and you learn from them and you had no way of knowing. And then maybe you go to another town, you maybe moved, and then you learn a new experience, and they're like, what the hell was I learning before? Now we have the internet. It's good and bad. That now you can see what total bullshit is, but now everyone can get this idiot opinion out there, which is good, though, because I think freedom of speech is important for that reason. It develops, okay, that person's an idiot, that person's not, hey, they said something, where are they coming from? How can we fix that? Because now you know where everyone's heads are at. You can actually work towards something better, though that's not what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah, it requires, I think, a certain level of intellect.
Yeah.
And also a little bit of understanding of the martial arts. There's a lot of videos out there with techniques that when I look at them, I can analyze them, take them apart, and understand how it works.
Yeah.
And I can also see, is it actually a real life thing, or is it just some weird stunt that I would never be able to pull off?
Yeah.
I think it's also when people come into self-defense, some people have this weird conception when they watch all those kung fu movies or action movies. You know, you see all those crisp techniques and everything always works.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that self-defense in real life, it's messy, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
It's not always working as it's supposed to be. And yeah, so it's, I mean, the internet is good because of all the information, but again, as you said, there's also so many people who have weird thoughts. Yeah. Like the earth is hollow and there is lizard people living underneath surface.
Easily disprovable, but you know.
Our earth is flat.
Yeah. That one, to me, is just like baseball.
I know.
Like, I don't know if some people are serious or they actually believe that.
I have heard all kinds of stuff from people who really believe it. The most surprising is always when you met this person and you think, oh well, it's a quiet, intelligent person, you can talk to them, and then they have those strange ideas. Like I heard the conspiracy that dinosaurs are not real, that there's people out there that are burying the bones. I
mean, I'm sure there are people doing stuff like that, because people do weird stuff, because, you know, take it one area and put it in another. But, the evidence strongly does not suggest that.
Yeah, I know, right? And then you have to listen to those people, and it doesn't even make sense to argue because it's just a lost cause for me. I can't even.
Can't even. Yeah, well, you don't usually find out the truth of stuff till 50 years later when everyone who didn't want the truth to come out is dead on any given topic. Or, what was it? John Danaher said in that one of his podcasts he did recently, he's like, in order for science to progress, you need the old people to die, meaning that the establishment, professors and scientific people are often stuck in their ways. And I've been doing this my whole life. I don't accept that argument. A lot of people will say, listen to the person, even martial artists, this person's been doing it their whole life. I don't accept it. That's a bullshit, unscientific stance because, hey, now we have new information. You were wrong. Shit. Deal with it. Right? It's the martial arts. I learned from this guy from my whole life. Now we find out a lot of kung fu styles don't work unarmed hand-to-hand in a real situation anymore. And also different people. Like, many people that come from China, it's a different body type. Yeah. When you now look at Europeans, they tend to be just bigger, stronger. Yeah. And good luck finding the pressure point. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. Right. And, that's actually, if you think about it, I probably said this before, like for most of human history, the people who learned proper combat training were the wealthy people and the people they were paying, because everyone else was too busy trying to survive to spend the time to develop their skills. Like, you in Japanese culture, it's pretty easy. It's like the samurai were elite, right? And the peasants had nothing against them. They couldn't do much unless they got like a number. Same in Europe, the knights were basically nobility. To become a knight was difficult. Everyone else was a peasant working in farms. And so you could have bullshit techniques for a long time against most people. Other knights or other samurai, you cannot have bullshit techniques. But a lot of stuff you could probably get away with on the average person back then. They would have no concept of how to fight. Like, just the average person doesn't know how to fight. They start windmilling, right? Like, Simpson style. And now with the internet, you can actually see what actually works pretty quickly. And now there's, nuances. The self-defense versus the fighting argument I'm having right now with a lot of people. But now you have to be driven towards the truth faster, because you'll be called out faster if you're not doing that. Of course, if you're a powerful person and you're not being truthful, you can bury it a little bit, but it's coming out faster and faster. So I think the world is going to change. Now, on that note, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is to talk about your blog post series, Doomed to Repeat. For those, you can go on the blog. I'm going to do another one after this, breaking it down, just me, but I wanted to get Petra's expanded perspective on that post. Maybe you go through them a little bit, or if you remember them, the general idea behind the post and what you're feeling with regards to what's going on today and your experience.
The Doomed to Repeat part, I think right now we can't afford to kind of be lazy. I think in many Western countries, most people have it really well. Most of us, we have a roof over our head, we have a job, we can pay our bills, we don't have to worry about shelter, food, and basic stuff. So I find very often people start just, it's okay to enjoy life, but you still have to ask questions, and people start relying a lot on the government without asking, okay, what are you doing? Is that the right thing to do? And I think back in Eastern Germany, you didn't really have a chance because they played people against each other. You couldn't even trust your neighbor, sometimes not even a family member, to talk about stuff, to discuss critical situations, or where you thought that that's not right, it shouldn't be handled that way. Because you would risk to be thrown into jail, being tortured, and never see the day of light again. And it might even destroy your family because they might take the kids away, because the government held all the power. And right now, I find that in many cultures, Western countries, we're back to the point that people just, government will know what to do. And I find that it's a kind of lazy approach, And it scares me because I don't trust the government.
Yeah. Neither do I.
You can think I'm a conspiration. What's the word? Conspiracy theorist. Sorry. But that's just my experience.
Yeah.
And now very often there's a narrative that's being pushed, and if you don't follow the narrative, there's a big group of people that
There's
is
the
just, hey Rambo, you're kind of being crucified in quotation marks online, and it might even cost you your job because it's just
don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
And Rambo is my annoying little cat.
Well, that's fine. I had a cat for years and years and years.
Also, if you're speaking out, if you're not following the narrative, if you're asking questions that are inconvenient for a lot of people, so they're trying to shut you down. They're trying to take your livelihood away, if I'm exaggerating here. And it also scares other people to speak up and ask questions. And that's really scary for me, because we're running down that road again, where the government holds all the power, or a group of people is holding all the power, and you're not allowed to ask questions or do anything outside of a certain parameter. It's just when I see that, it's just so confusing. And if you're trying to be rational about it and try to bring examples, I was watching lots of YouTube videos about certain topics like socialism versus capitalism, and all those different ideas, economic structures, German history, other history of other countries. And I think the time we're living in is very dangerous, because it's kind of, we can make a choice. We can either remain on that path we're on and risking tumbling down the road where I came from socialism, and again, having a group of people in charge of everything, and you're not allowed to do anything else.
Yeah.
Or we're really trying to ask questions and try to find out what can we do to make it better, or what can we do to avoid that situation. And it's, I don't know. I also don't trust the media. I always have several websites I'm checking to find out what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And I still feel there's pieces of the puzzle missing. But it's also, I find that there's a lot of people who are just, the government told us to do that, and let's just follow their instructions. And that makes me really uncomfortable.
Question everything. No, it's like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were really getting into this topic that they're re-educating themselves, and they kind of had this generic response of like, well, I should trust the experts. I'm like, but why? Right? And who's experts? And then they said, wait, so you're telling me like I can look this stuff up myself now and educate myself just like I did with this other topic? And I'm like, yeah, that's the beauty of the internet, right? The thing is there's something called spycraft, where and I read this book called The Volunteer. Canadian military, went to Israel, converted, served, and went into Mossad, and he was talking about they just need to confuse you in spycraft. We just need to release 10 to 20% crazy shit that sounds insane, because truth is stranger than fiction sometimes, and that confuses people. People don't know what to believe, and people we're designed in a way where stability is our preference. We want to know exactly what's going to happen. People are happier when they have stability. And when you start telling people you have to do more work for yourself, the answer isn't always yes and no. Because people have a hard preference to, I want a black and white binary choice. Because if you actually listen to good scientists and good experts, they will it drives me a little nuts, because sometimes you guys can say a little bit more definitive answers. But it's, I do it too. So it's not a yes or no answer to that. I can't give you an answer. You can see the look on people's faces. It's like, but I just want an answer. I'm like, but the question you asked is not a yes or no. It's complicated, and I need to explain all this stuff. So you'll see them fleshing it out, and the politicians, most of whom don't understand the stuff themselves, even the ones who have an MD behind, they don't always understand. They're being yelled at by people who understand even less sometimes, although, let's say, our current PM has no idea what he's doing, whatever. And it's all about appeasing the emotional state. Instead of educating people at a one-on-one level, you need to learn, you need to grow, you need to make decisions. That's how a true democracy works, because everyone's informed and understands how to do things, so that we can make rational decisions. Now, on the internet, there is a censorship problem going on. People say there's not. There is. Because there is all doctors. COVID's a good example of doctors and scientists who are experts in the field too, as well, countering what's being said. You can't find their videos on YouTube.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah.
And it's also for other scientists, like, for example, James Lindsay, who, with his peers, they issued those very, very stupid crap articles. And
which one's James Lindsay? I've lost track of who I is now.
James Lindsay, he and Heather Pluckrose, I think is her name.
Yeah.
They publish articles in very renowned science magazines.
Oh yeah, okay now.
And they were just bullshit.
They published bullshit studies that were just made up to suit the narrative, and they got passed through the peer review on half of them. Well, some of them already got published. A large percentage of them were on the way to being published. Yeah. And what they were trying to prove is that, and their studies were just so insane. I can't. He was like, what stupid thing can I put in it to make it even funny?
Yeah, but they used certain trigger words.
Yeah, the buzzwords.
Yeah, the buzzwords.
Like, it just showed you, while peer review is still worthy of something, it's collapsing. And then I still have to use, hey, this study's peer-reviewed to get people to listen sometimes, right? Vitamin D, the governments didn't talk about it regarding COVID, nothing. And I was like, hey, I have 100 peer-reviewed studies from around the world saying something. And people are like, well, I didn't hear about that. It's like, yeah, because you have to know where to look. You have to know how to find them. A lot of them are publicly available. Luckily, academia is taking its head out of its ass regarding that. And you can get access to all sorts of papers now. Most people don't want to read them. That's academia's fault, because you're writing for each other. You need to. I think they need to do. If you're going to publish it in a publicly available thing, you have to have a toned down version, less technical things. So what was the premise? What was the findings? And just simply so people actually can read it. Because a lot of people, it's like, I can't understand that. And even then, they do that a lot of the time to confuse people. So even their own peers don't even understand the bullshit that's in their papers. Like, I figured, I did psychology. It's not a hard science. But even then, I realized that's what the hell. I read so many papers that are just bullshit. Like, they're not saying anything. It's just a lot of words. What's the conclusion? It's because they didn't get a statistical thing. They should have just said, here's my thesis. This study did not work. Clearly. Doesn't mean your thesis isn't wrong or right or wrong. It means maybe we should look at it differently, ask a different question. But that's the funding. How does funding work? Oh, you didn't show anything? We're not going to give you more funding. I think the solution to this problem is governments shouldn't be the source of funding, and corporations shouldn't be the source of funding. You need scientists doing science for science sake, funded by scientists. And a lot of them have money, and they just don't want to put their money where their mouth is. It's like all the studies now to do with PTSD and MDMA and psilocybin. Now, that's one good thing I liked about Obama, is he allowed the studies to continue. However, they've been struggling to get financing for it. They've been getting it from private donors who, for personal reasons, like Tim Ferriss has been giving millions to that, progressing this, which seems like it's going to make most psychiatric medicine obsolete, from what I can see. But you're going to see heavy resistance from the pharmaceutical companies, because guess what? And don't do this, but you can, because it's still illegal in a lot of places, but you can go grow mushrooms in your backyard. If you have chemistry knowledge, you could hypothetically, and again, it's still illegal and it's dangerous doing chemistry in your house. You could make MDMA technically, right? So this is not substances that pharmaceuticals can control. They're not substances that governments can control. The whole war on drugs showed they can't control this shit. And yet it's going to be a mental health revolution. And there should be legal in Canada soon for legal therapy uses. I'm not sure what the time frame is on that. But you find that it took private money from people, not corporations, just private money who genuinely want to see research progressing forward due to a personal reason. And you're starting to find answers we could have found 30, 40 years ago because they were doing it back then and got stopped because of government interference, misinformed public, corruption, pharmaceuticals. Like, you know, and I'll be fair to the pharmaceutical companies. Yes, you have done some good stuff over the years, and without you, a lot of diseases would not be cured. But most of what you're doing is bullshit. Most of the pills you're handing out are bullshit, right? As I had a staph infection on my finger, right? And normally, what do you do for staph infection? It's like, here, you can see it's scabbing now because it healed really quick. I didn't take antibiotics. Now, I know first aid. So I was like, oh, shit, that's a infection. So I know that if it starts spreading past the localized area, I'm going to the hospital and I'm getting antibiotics because I could die. But I'm watching and I'm like, should I go get antibiotics? Because that's what we're told. But then I remember listening to the Gordon Ryan story about how he took antibiotics, oral antibiotics, for his staph. And that's the reason his stomach is messed up. And then I found out that antibiotics actually do a lot of, oral antibiotics, do a lot of damage to your gut biome. And as we're finding out through private research for the most part, that the gut biome is really important, how you eat and etc. So I'm like, okay, well, it's not spreading locally past where it is. I'm hesitant to take oral antibiotics now. I will if I have to, because it works. And then I guess my now wife was looking it up. Apparently there's a shit ton of peer-reviewed studies saying aloe vera. We have an aloe vera plant. So we just cut it up, started using it, boom, started healing really quickly. And I'm like, wait, so you're telling me that there's a lot of science behind this? The peer-reviewed studies are out there. But if I go to the doctor, they're immediately going to be like, here, take a pill. And I don't understand how people can't see a problem with that. The science is there. Anecdotally, I can say it works. Going in, I would have been like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That sounds like bullshit medicine. But then you forget a lot of medicine originally came from nature, like aspirin. It's one of the first big pharmaceutical things. It comes from willow bark, I believe. So I imagine someone at some point was chewing willow bark to cause some pain relief, and then they just turned it into a pill. But now if I tell someone, hey, just go chew willow bark, they're going to look at you like you're nuts. There's more to it than that, I'm sure. But you realize when you start digging and asking the right questions, you start realizing a lot of what I was told of why things are the way they are, like martial arts do this technique because it's bullshit. You call it out, you're called a conspiracy theory, but it's like, it's not. Here's the evidence. Nope, pharmaceutical companies are good. Well, first of all, no, they're not. The way they operate is bullshit, right? So, I mean, I don't know how bad we are or are going down the path of it, because you grew up in Eastern Germany, right? During the communist era.
Yeah, socialism.
Yeah, because that's interesting. You use the word socialism, but here we will be call them just outright communists. Do you think there's much of a difference, though? Or is that just what you grew up being told to call it?
It was called socialism. I think socialism is kind of in between. It's not full communism yet.
Yeah.
Communism really means that everything is owned by, theoretically it's owned by the people, but yeah, we all know that doesn't work. But that's the idea behind it. And socialism, there is still, so my parents had their own little shop, so they were still allowed to, they had their private little enterprise.
Yeah.
It was very tiny, but it was still okay for them to do. So socialism is not full communism yet, but it's just, I think, the last step before it turns into communism.
Yeah.
And so we had that situation, and it, of course, affected all our lives, every area of our life, and it's just not where I want to go again.
Yeah, it's a lot of people from Eastern Europe who moved here.
Yeah,
are very annoyed, and if you're in Eastern Europe now, they're kind of going more sort of a fascist route right now, which is a little. But we'll see. It's mainly as a backlash to the socialist ideas.
The counter reaction kind of to it.
It's the pendulum is swinging, and so the people on the left right now don't understand why that's happening. Oh, they're just this. Now, fascism, communism, it's not as black and white as people think. There is a lot. Like you saying, oh, well, you grew up in socialism. My parents could have their own little shop. Well, that's one of the main differences from fascism, communism is. you can still have privately run stuff in fascism, and communism you can't. But they're both end up being authoritarian dictatorships almost always. So everyone thinks they understand the two, but they're so intertwined in their policies that they end up looking the same half the time. It's just like on a principle thing. The state owns everything for the people, or you own your stuff, but the state gets to decide in the end anyway.
Yeah, and you have to follow, of course, the state's policy. And like during the 30s in the Third Reich, and when the Nazis were in power, there was many big industrial enterprises like ThyssenKrupp, the big steel manufacturer.
Volkswagen. Although was that owned by the state? No, I don't know.
I don't think so. But the Volkswagen was created during the Nazi time.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a car for the people, affordable.
Yeah. Which is hilarious because they were, more fascist, even though they're Democratic Socialist Party, which gets confusing because people will be like, they were fascists. It's like, but they were called the Democratic Socialists. Yeah. Can we talk about that?
It is very confusing. Even for me looking back, it's just sometimes a big blur. And I mean, as soon as it becomes authoritarian, if one person has the power over every decision, that's just when it really goes south, and you don't want that.
Which in Canada, they're starting to try to move that direction. It's weird because you're getting, I'm not sure what to think about it in Canada, because you're getting provinces that are very right-wing going authoritarian, which in the traditional thinking is what you would say, yes, that's expected. But then you have very left-wing provinces going super authoritarian. And it's not specific to a political ideology. And it's, again, showing that it doesn't matter whether if it's fascism or communism or socialism. What's bad is authoritarian, dictatorial behavior where the people's opinion doesn't matter. And if you're taking the stance that the people are stupid, which you're going to hear me saying all the damn time, well, guess what? If you're in the leadership position, educate them so that they can make more informed decisions. Like, that's a big part of the reason I am the way I am, because I want to educate people to make more informed decisions. Right? Do I think half the world is a bunch of morons? Yes, but I'm not going to sit there and tell you how to live your life if you're not bothering me. But, everyone gets fear in there. Oh, my group is going to get this. And then they start telling other people how to do as a backlash. And there's just a small group of people. Yeah, well, look at Saddam Hussein. A small group of people maintained power in Iraq because they took the power and kept the power. Well, they
were very, they took the initiative.
Yeah.
They were actively doing something. There's so many people who are just leaning back and saying, we'll be fine. Yeah. But what's the saying, for evil things to happen, it just takes the good people to not do anything or something. Yeah.
And that's the truest thing. And I was, I've said it before, I was annoyed at the martial arts community. Most of them knew that something was wrong with the policies. And I can go dig up the evidence. If you really want me to sit there for a month, I'll put together like a 100-page essay about why we didn't need to close down for COVID, and I can find evidence, scientific evidence, and I can throw it down people's throat, and they're still gonna be like, well, yeah, you're not an expert. I don't need to be. I'm drawing from them. That's the whole point of experts, is to focus the energy so that they can gather the basic information. But that doesn't mean I still can't interpret it and look at it and say like, hey, and I understand some people can't. Okay, well then you have to be even more careful about what you're believing. And the martial arts community just kind of rolled over. I don't know. Here it wasn't too bad, but I probably at least 10 schools that I know of closed down in the province if you couldn't make it through. Which I think, given the government handouts in Canada at least, there's probably something wrong with your business model if that's the case. Because I had financial trouble and I made it through. But if they didn't hand out that money, Canadians would have stood up a little bit more because they would have felt the pressure a lot more. But I just found very few people really wanted to stand up in Canada and say, no, we're educated, hypothetically. Why aren't people saying no? In fact, in Toronto, they're demanding to stay locked down, some people. And it's like, what is wrong with you people? I see it as a mental health issue. They would rather be in their house away from people, and they want to force that because they prefer it. So they want to force it on other people because who wants to deal with people they don't like, right?
I'm an introvert. If I can avoid people, it's the greatest thing ever. But even for me, I was living by myself and didn't really have a person to talk to, and I felt the impact of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just not healthy. we're social creatures, so we need interaction. Some people need it more, some people need it less, but you always need some interaction with people.
Yeah.
I think what I also find very disappointing is that people don't really talk to each other anymore. It's more like a screaming competition.
Yeah.
Who is yelling the loudest, who's being heard the most, and people are so stuck on their opinion, and they don't understand that for science, for example, for ideas to progress, you need a constructive dialogue. You cannot just say, no, that's how it is.
Yeah.
And as you already said, it's not black or white. There's always different angles to stuff, and you have to understand at some point you might have to change your opinion maybe because you were wrong.
Well, that's the thing, is you have to decide when talking to people, like, are they being stubborn because they're just being stubborn? Are they being stubborn because they don't want to admit they don't know something? Are they being stubborn because I didn't make a good argument? You know, for me, a lot of people will call me stubborn throughout my life, and I keep telling people, no, you haven't convinced me. You've made a poor argument. And so a lot of people's stance is, well, either I've had people tell me, well, I can't argue with you. It's not going to work. Because they don't want to go do the time to get the information to convince me to change my mind. And people interpret that as stubborn. It's like, no, I will change my mind, but I take a conservative approach to it for a reason. Because if, we get this new piece of information and we all jump off that cliff and we were wrong, crap, we're dead. Oh, you mean gravity's real? Shit. I'll change my mind. You can ask my wife. I will change my mind. But you have to, let me see the evidence. And I don't want to hear it from one person. I want to see it from a bunch of people. Can you get it from more than one study? Because if I can see more than one study from more than one country, I'm going to, okay, there is something about that. Because if it's just one study from one place, it could be biased. There's heavy biases. So you have to look, are people saying this all over the world? Because now I'm going to start to listen. Because it's like, okay. And most people, again, they don't want to look up the research themselves. They want to rely on the experts or the government. You want to change someone's mind, it could be that your argument is shit. It could be that you don't actually know what you're talking about and they know something you don't. They say you should listen to everyone. They might teach you something. That's true, they might, but it might be something completely irrelevant to the argument you're having. It could be they just knew something about a flower you didn't know, or something like that. But when it comes to staying on that argument of we're arguing about this person clearly doesn't know enough. So if someone is getting frustrated with you, they're trying to convince you of something, you actually sometimes need to start asking them questions to see if they even know. Because if you are like, I know something they don't, I need to find out, do they actually know this? Because a lot of people will have arguments or conversations on the assumption that the other person knows what you know, and they don't. The more you know and the more intellectual you are, the more frustrating it is, because you have to end up explaining everything. And if you're not an expert on that topic, it's hard to explain. Like, at Krav Maga martial arts, I can go hours easily, but if it's like, the spike protein stuff with the COVID thing, like, I can kind of explain it, but I don't understand it enough. Like, I got the gist that I can make an informed opinion, but I don't know enough to go into depth to explain the detailed science. So a lot of people will tune out, well, you don't understand it enough. I'm like, well, I know enough to make an informed decision about this now, okay? I don't know the science. So if you want to, I can point you in the right direction and you can go do the studying yourself. And then, of course, they'll be like, no, I don't want to do that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
It's also, right now the tendency is to focus on emotions. How does it make a person feel?
Yeah.
But, I'm German, so we don't have too many emotions to begin with.
What are emotions?
I find that frustrating because we're sugarcoating a lot of stuff just not to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, facts are facts.
Yeah.
Gravity works. You can like it, you don't have to like it, but it is a fact.
Yeah. Well, with that one, it's easy. Like, so even 1,000 years ago, before we had the understanding, you can say, I dropped this ball, it will fall. That is fact. They then spent the next 1,000 years arguing about why the ball drops, but the fact is that, right?
Ball drops, yeah.
You go hypothesis, right? You do experiments, you do research, or you go Here's the thing, I always forget this, and I think a lot of scientists have forgot this. It starts with an anecdotal observation or anecdotal thought based on something. Sometimes it's nothing because we have the bias to see patterns when there aren't sometimes as humans. But you start with that, because sometimes if you look at anecdotal observation when witnessed in groups after groups after groups after groups, that's an experiment in itself, and I don't need to do a double-blind placebo effect to see, hey, something's going on. We can debate about the why. So you go anecdotal, hypothesis, now it becomes to theory. Theory isn't fact yet. It's a working theory. As we get more and more information on every topic on the universe, like the brains in Futurama, we're going to destroy the whole universe so there's no new information and we cannot say we understood everything. And then it goes to fact. So the more we know, the more facts we will have. But just because, if you listen to a lot of scientists who are being realistic, they're like, well, it's not a fact yet, because they can't say with 100% certainty. It drives me nuts, because I'm like, listen, colloquially, it's a generally accepted fact. That you could say that. Doesn't mean it's 100% true, but it's generally accepted until some new information comes out. But they don't like to use fact, because the reality is most of our knowledge isn't factual, because it's not at 100%. Even if it's at 99%, they don't like to call it a fact. Like I was listening to Brett Weinstein. He's being heavily censored on the internet because he's talking about COVID. He's an evolutionary biologist. He knows what he's talking about. He works with people who know what he's talking about. He's one of the first people that I heard of on the internet saying this was a man-made virus, right? He got called all sorts of names. Fauci's email says this was a man-made virus now, in detail explaining how it's a man-made virus, right? But he, listening to Brett Weinstein, does not like to say things factually. He's super anal about it. It drives me nuts, because I'm like, man, come on, just give me a little bit sometimes. No, well, it's 95% certain. I can't say different. It's like, that's enough. I like to take the Jeff Bezos Amazon, 70%. It's good enough to make an informed. It's not good enough to say it's fact. It's good enough to make a reasonable informed thing. But they are like, if I say it's a fact, I'll get sued, because people are trying to bring them down, even though they're being more honest. Right? And this is a guy, by the way, I don't know if you followed him, who 10 years ago, along with God Sayed, were screaming about university campuses, going mad, woke, and psychotic.
Yeah, I followed him. I read about the Evergreen incident.
Yeah. And everyone is ignoring him. And now it turns out he's being true. Based on that, I'm going to say he is more honest than a lot of other scientists, because it's clear he has lost a lot in order to get where he is and get his voice out there. So I think based on that, he's put his ass on the line. He's lost money. He's lost jobs. He's lost prestige to put himself out there. That makes him a more honest person. So I'm going to be more willing to listen to a guy like that than someone like Fauci, who's been caused lying constantly. And they'll say, well, we meant good. I don't care. You lied. Be honest.
And he's still trying to explain why, and he still expects people to not question him.
I know why they do it. They all come to the same conclusion. They think you're all idiots. Again, I can think you're all idiots too. I'm still not going to sit here and I'm going to try to educate you and give you an informed decision. You can make your decision one way or the other. And if I'm in an area where it's surrounded by people I think are idiots, then I get to move. That's the whole point of a free society. If Canada goes full ridiculous, I'm probably moving to Texas. So, which would be very unfortunate, but hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Well, I mean, I still have my German passport, so if push comes to shove, I can still go back to Europe.
Now, I think the EU is going to collapse, personally. Germany will be fine on its own, but that because they're basically propping up the EU. Like, France is in a weird position right now, where they're going to go sideways one way or another. Because I think if Le Pen, this is French politics, that I'm not an expert. You have Macron, who's much more of a globalist, EU supporter. No one wants to talk about the fact he married his high school his teacher. They were probably sleeping together before, but they're French, so it's fine over there. Just saying. Europeans. And then you have Le Pen, and the thing is, Le Pen is, her father was kind of Nazi-ish. That doesn't make her a Nazi, but she is more right-wing. The question is how right-wing. That's where I'm like, because a lot of Jews are like, no, you cannot get her in. But I'm like, the French are Quebec is doing this at Canada's expense, unfortunately. The French, whether Quebecois or French, are very like, this is our culture. Don't tell us what to do. And they're potentially seeing a civil war. Like, it's hard to say. Like, if Le Pen gets in, I think the next election's in a year and a bit. If Le Pen gets in, it might diffuse some of the tension one way, but it'll go the other way. And then the EU will probably collapse if that happens. But I'm not for centralized control anyway. But I don't know what she's going to do. How authoritarian is she going to be? I don't know.
Yeah, we have to wait and see if she's getting elected. And
Yeah.
also people have to understand that right-wing means something different in the US, in Canada, and in Germany, for example. So you cannot just... Right-wing is not always the right-wing that you know from your country. So
if you vote conservative in Canada, you're actually, in many things, much more conservative, traditional conservative, than, say, a Republican in California. It's very different. Canadians, though, as a whole, even the conservatives as a total, though, are politically probably more left-wing than most Americans. See, I just gave two things where it's like, well, they're traditional conservative, but they're also progressive. Because most conservatives in Canada didn't care as much about the gay marriage thing as they did in America. So in that sense, it's like, whatever. And no one gives Stephen Harper, the former conservative prime minister, credit for that, because he openly was against it, but he shut down the debate, said, no, gay marriage is legal, leave it alone, we're not talking about this anymore, because he said Canadian public wants this. That's leadership. And he was demonized by the media, demonized for that, because, it's being influenced by Americans, I think, at this point. And that is a good point, because I don't even know what right or left. I think extreme right in Germany is straight up Nazi, right, I guess?
Yeah, that's where they go back round.
Yeah. Which is still illegal, though, in Germany.
It depends how far they go down that rabbit hole. I mean, the Secret Service in Germany, they have certain organizations on their list that they're monitoring to make sure that it's not escalating again how it did in the 30s. But you can have your own opinion, but again, it just shouldn't be escalating down that route where immigrants are being what's the word I'm looking for? Harassed, or even worse. I mean, there were back in 20 years ago or so, there were a couple immigrant homes or facilities, like big homes where when you came to Germany, that was just the first stop for you to go where you could live, and they were burned down. So there was big issues there, and there's also the tendency in Germany to think that if you're in Eastern Germany, there's a higher probability that people are more Nazi, leaning towards the right wing.
Which is
opinion,
ironic.
But I mean, sure, okay. But I mean, these ideas are still around. Yes, we lost the war, but those people, they were still around. You cannot just flip the switch in the head of people and say, this is not how you're supposed to think anymore. Change that. That's not going to happen. They're just not talking about it all openly. I mean, after World War II, there was a system called, or process called denazification. So they were just put into camps, educated, and then after 2 weeks, they were out on the street again. And I mean, you cannot change a person's mindset in 2 weeks. If they're really like hardcore believing all those ideas, no chance. And they still spread it in their families. They're raising their kids a certain way. So that's just something. Education is key. So, I mean...
Education, not indoctrination.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's a big difference. And for me, education also means that you have access to all kinds of information. So it's not being censored. And that's what I'm seeing now, right now again, that there's certain books that are being censored. You shouldn't be reading. I think it's The Catcher in the Rye that is again on the list.
Classical American literature is being censored.
How to Kill a Mockingbird, I think is
being pulled in. This is an American school.
Yeah.
So.
And that's just, for me, that's unbelievable.
I heard there's theorizing they're going to eventually ban 1984 so that you don't know what an authoritarian government is. They're basically banning George Orwell because he tells people.
Or Animal Farm.
Yeah, and I feel like they got their playbooks right from him or something. I almost feel. But I don't think so, because obviously stuff was being done by Stalin. I think a lot of the playbooks comes out of Stalin.
Yeah, Lenin, Stalin,
and
they started.
Goebbels as well, like these propaganda experts that people are still copying from them. Like Stalin was photoshopping people out of textbooks before Photoshop was even a thing.
I know, right? It's fascinating, but it's also terrifying. Whenever I think of Stalin, for me, it's just terrifying that this person was in power and what he did. I still have to read Archipelago Gulag from Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah. I don't know if I can do that to myself, but
yeah, I have to be in the right mindset. So when I'm having one of my bumpy moments, when the burnout and depression is like sneaking up, so I have to be careful what I'm reading.
Yeah.
And I usually keep it light.
I think that would be very depressing. I don't read certain books because I get the idea, and I'm just like, I don't want to do that to myself.
Yeah, and it's just when you read that, you're just like, it's just sometimes it's so unbelievable what one human can do to another human. It's and only because they think they have the wrong idea in their head.
For Prisoner's Dilemma,
essentially,
or the Stanford Prison Experiment, which I believe was redone in Germany, and they got similar results. Even when you try to take the extreme bias of the original I forgot the guy's name, the original done, it was a biasly done, and they slam him a lot for it and saying, "Oh, that was," but he was right. The in-group, out-group, we set our roles, and you're seeing the left right now try to go way too the pendulum, like to the point where it's ridiculous. But you start seeing that now, since we breached the topic, mental health, right?
Yes.
As much as you want, you don't have to put everything out there, of course. But what's been your experience with that?
Mental health, I wasn't really aware of it when it started for me. I think it started end of school, starting university, that I had a little bit of where it started that my mental health was not in a good place.
Yeah.
But it was not a very open topic. You would not publicly talk about it. So,
because Germans have no feelings.
Germans have no feelings. As a German, you have to function. Nobody gives a crap about how you feel.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be emotional. That's just a no-no. And being open and talk to your employer about that you have depression or you have a burnout and you need some time off, that's just career suicide.
Yeah.
But for me, I think it is a little bit, it's part of my family history. I think my dad had a tendency to that. So just to give a little bit of insight, my dad was married before he married my mom. And he had 3 children. They're all significantly older than me. But for me, they're still my siblings. So unfortunately, his wife passed away, and then he married my mom. And my oldest brother always exhibited strange symptoms. And they tried to treat him, but back then it was just not as developed, the techniques.
Totally experimental back then.
Yeah, and I think for some approaches, it was just not helping him. They thought they were helping him, but sometimes he just might have needed a kick in the ass.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he had the tendency to pretend to hurt himself to get the attention.
Yeah.
And it got crazier and way more obscure. And at the end, it went so far that he actually, unfortunately, passed away. And that was just seeing my dad suffering like that. It was just, it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
And yeah, so going through that, then also going through some changes myself, school, university, life. And at some point it was just too much. And it started very slowly. I didn't really notice it at the beginning. But then at some point, maybe 8-9 years later, when I was living in South Germany, I really noticed I found help. I had an incident where I woke up at night and I was just not really myself. I was kind of watching myself doing something stupid or about to do something stupid. I mean, at the end, I didn't do it. But that was for me the moment where I thought, okay, I need help. I need professional help.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to find a therapist who helped me a lot on digging. But it also means...
Is this in Germany or in Canada?
That's in Germany. But it takes a lot of time and also self-reflection. And as a German, you're not supposed to be self-reflective.
Yes.
Don't watch yourself too much. Don't pay too much attention to yourself. It hurts. Well, put a Band-Aid on it. Yeah. So it's not really like... Again, functioning. Be able to be a functioning member of society.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I get lucky. I had a therapist. I went on medication that helped me a lot. I was also doing distance studies at the time for my bachelor's degree in business administration. So I worked full time, 45 hours a week, and then I still had to sit down and study. It was a hard time, and then I broke up with my ex now. bestest decision ever.
Yeah, toxic relationships are bad, yeah.
And at some point, I was really tired and burned out. I spoke to my employer and asked if I could get the 3-month sabbatical, and they were nice enough to agree to that. But again, at the end, it was for me career suicide, so it was just not working for me. So when I then came to Canada, first of all, Canada is more open when it comes to mental health, I find, at least compared to Germany.
Yes.
And they're really trying to have this realistic work-life balance. In Germany, people identify themselves through their jobs.
Yeah.
So,
which is not a good thing to do.
No.
Unless you really love it, then it's different. But still.
Yeah, it's just people always brag about how many hours they work, how much overtime they do.
I'm more efficient than you.
And yeah, stuff like that. Or when you left one day on time, it's just like, so it took half a day off, eh? It's just like, it's not healthy. It's not helping anybody. So but here in Canada, it's a little bit more open, and my employer, they offer a lot of help. Not that I would take it from them. I still, like, that experience back in Germany really scarred me.
Yeah.
So I'm not that open with my current employer about that.
Yeah.
But Krav Maga actually helped me a lot about
that's good.
So first of all, raised in Eastern Germany means they try to raise you into a good worker drone. Yeah. So don't think for yourself. Yeah. And I always was not a very confident kid. I was timid. I was very shy, and I'm also an introvert. So lots of things to unpack. But Krav really helped me to step out of that. Maybe also because I left the country. I left my family and friends there, so I made a really clean cut. I mean,
sometimes that's necessary.
No, it's
I mean, like, getting away from the things that are keeping you the way you are, and sometimes you need. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is, and knowing when is tricky.
I mean, I didn't really know it, but at that time, I wanted to try to move to Canada, see how it goes, because I rather try and fail than not have it done it at all. Yeah. I still have, of course, contact to my friends there and to my family, but it's nice because it's a very controlled situation. So because we always have to schedule Skype sessions. Yeah. But yeah, so then in Canada, first of all, I was by myself, and I really had to look out for myself and kind of hit the reset button for me. And then Krav Maga started really helping me getting out of that mindset to, like, not asking questions, be more confident, get out of that worker drone thinking, getting out of that thinking, feeling bad that I'm German. It's another point when you're being German, you're raised like, you people started 2 world wars. Oh,
see, that's that guilt. That's the exact same thing as the white guilt. It's the same thing. It's nonsense. You didn't do it. Grandparents, different story, right?
Well, yeah, and like, not even my parents. My dad was born 1930. Yes, he went through the Hitler Jugend. Yeah. But my mom born 1939. She was just baby. Yeah. But changing a lot of my mindset, changing how I see certain things in life, changing myself, like cleaning stuff up that I was doing wrong at that point. So that helped me a lot. And Canadians tend to sugarcoat stuff, and I very often don't.
Me nuts too.
And I very often don't get the memo. I think, okay, what do you want me to do now? I mean, for me, you really have to be clear and specific what you want me to do. And this is where you help me too, because you don't sugarcoat. You just tell them, no, that's not going to work. You have to change that.
I think I'm mildly autistic. I'm a highly functional person. I don't know what the hell. If I take all sorts of tests, they're going to give me all sorts of different answers. I'm some strange mix of things, but I don't see the point in wasting time.
No, and it's not helping. For me, I mean, everybody's different, so I can only speak for myself, but for me, really being faced with inconvenient truths about myself, that helped me change stuff.
Well, that's good that I could do that. That was actually, I mean, not specifically to you, but when I chose the name Urban Tactics, my goal originally was to be more than just self-defense. And now I'm slowly figuring out how to teach in a way that I'm helping that a bit more. Was that to have, like, how to survive physically, how to survive mentally, and then how to survive socially. That was my goal. I don't have the resources to do that. So I've just changed my teaching style a little bit over the years so I can kind of get all the stuff into there. Those who want to listen, great. Those who don't, usually don't come back. I probably piss people off because they're used to the sugarcoating thing. But I find it's so counterproductive. And you know, I was talking to another individual who has some significant mental health issues. And I was on SSRIs too, and it's the conclusion from a lot of mentally ill people are they don't really want to be on that stuff because they're just a band-aid. They're not actually fixing the problem. And I agree with that sentiment, and a lot of people agree with that sentiment. And that's why I'm angry at the medical system. You guys are lazy because what they're doing is just trying not to get you to kill yourself. They don't want you to kill yourself. And I'm thinking that it's actually emotional on their end, because if you die, they feel bad. So it's easier for them to do that from a resource perspective. Here, take this pill. And this other person was saying, like, all it's doing is making me not want to kill myself, but my life is miserable. And it's like, yeah, because they're not trying to fix the problem. No, so there's a couple things. Like, a lot of therapy is bullshit. A lot of it. Because, to be honest, a lot of therapists suck, and they shouldn't be there. Some, as in your case, you got a good one. For me, I don't do well in therapy because I'm smarter than them most of the time. I understand what they're trying to do a lot of the time. So for me to find someone that actually really understands people, it's tricky. So I have to do my own investigation, my own finding. Well, let's just say a substance that I was talking about earlier, I've recently explored, and it's like flip the switch. And so I'll talk about SSRIs for a second. So, I suspect I've had issues, depression and anger. It's genetic as well, and upbringing and social rejection. I think that was the big one for me, and I didn't really think about it till recently. And then you go on SSRIs, and then what it did is it gave me context. So when people are like, don't be upset, like, just be happy. And I'm like, but my mind didn't have context. Like, you can keep telling me that. It means nothing to me. I need to contextualize it. And that's where a lot of it fails. Is just do this. You're telling me words. The words mean nothing to me because I have no experiential reference or knowledge to understand what you're talking about. And then I go on SSRIs and I'm like, okay, now I kind of understand what people were saying to me before. Like, hey, why are you reacting like that? So I was a very, very reactive person. And so SSRIs, I was very calm. So all of a sudden I was able to build some slightly better social skills, but it's robotic. It's very numb. And then I was like, let's go off these. And then of course, some people in my life who got used to me being stable, then I go off again and I'm a little bit more edgy. They couldn't handle it. It didn't work out so well. But then now I have context. So now when I go forward and I'm talking about ideas, it's like, okay, I have a little bit better understanding because I have some sort of referential point. Now I take some of this other stuff, boom, it's like a flip switches again. And now I can understand a little bit more because a lot of it is driven from biological processes that you can't control unless you can change the biology, which is where the pharmaceutical arguments are. But those guys, most of the time, they don't really even know how that stuff works. They're just giving you something that kind of gets results. It's not very well thought out, and they're being lazy. And then you find something like this, and it's like, oh, like I find I'm a little bit more compassionate now, a little bit more understanding, because it is a biochemical thing. And then you look into the research. While the therapy and the social skills are tools, you need the platform. The platform being your biochemistry, the tools is the therapy and the social interactions. And now I have a better understanding of how to approach it because I need the context. I think it's the 80-20 rule. It applies to everything. People don't want to because no one wants to be in the 80%. It's that 20% of people are doing 80% of the work. That includes all. Of 100 scientists, 20 of them are actually doing meaningful work. The rest of you are kind of just there. Oh, I'm an expert. You're not progressing anything, right? 20% of medications are probably really good and very helpful, and 80% are just being prescribed. And they don't need to be prescribed. Martial arts, 20% of people are actually making everyone better. 20% of teachers are the best. The rest don't need to be there, and they're wasting students' time. That's why school is boring a lot of the time, right? So I think as the internet allows people more and more to get access to that 20% in any topic, humanity will progress forward. By knowing the right questions and having enough information, you can know that the 80% are bullshit, and you don't need to listen to them, right? Like in Jiu-Jitsu, John Danaher, right? He's really revolutionizing how people train, and all of a sudden they're realizing the way that even the Gracies are being forced to change now. The way they were doing things is a waste of time for a lot of people, right? I know a lot of people don't like tradition and stuff. That's why they're drawn actually to Jiu-Jitsu because it's more like let's have fun and do it. But they're stuck in their ways sometimes. And I'm often thinking about I built a Krav Maga curriculum. How would I build a jiu-jitsu curriculum? And then I hear like John Danaher, he's like, I only teach 7 submissions. Now it's no gi. Obviously, gi you have to teach a bit more because you have a few. But it's like basically, what are the top 10 submissions of that? Which are the best? I'm going to focus on that. Build a system around that. Not even systematizing. It's understand the principles. And now we only spend time on what has been proven to be efficient. Most of humanity is that 80%, whether it be martial arts, medication, therapists, doctors, quote experts, politicians are mostly garbage. They're probably like 1% of them are actually doing meaningful work. And that's the hard part for people. It's like, that's a lot. Like sometimes when I talk to people about COVID and they say, listen, I think you're right, but it's just a lot. And they can't sift through the information just mentally. It's too much because they don't have the tools because no one taught them. I don't know. It's kind of all over the place on that.
No, I know what you mean. Like, especially when there's lots of information input, I usually start structuring the input. Yeah. So I review the input mentally and then put it either on the they're going this way pile or they're going the other way pile or miscellaneous.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to do with that yet.
So maybe I understand it later, but now no clue. And then I try to make sense of each pile individually and then try to piece it together for me. This is how it works for me, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work and commitment. And I can also understand that there's many people out there who just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to ask. But yeah, and for me, not trusting the government, no matter in which country I am, it has nothing to do with Canada or Germany or anything. It's just how I was, like, my backstory. Yeah. It's just, I just don't...
Because you couldn't trust the government back in the day. Like, it was dangerous.
Yeah. You couldn't, you shouldn't, just don't.
It's like if you talk to Russians, they're like, you think any of us believe what's in the news? We know it's all bullshit for the last, 100 years. We've been lied to for the last... That's why they don't trust anyone. It's like you won't be disappointed.
Exactly. So first lesson I learned from my dad: don't trust what you read in the newspaper, because it was just made up or skewed in a certain way. There's this joke always going around back then. The Russian president and the U.S. president did a swimming competition. Yeah. The Russian president came in second. Yeah. And how they presented it in the news was the Russian president, he had an amazing second place and the U.S. American was second to last. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just...
It's a fun way to spin it, right?
And that's very often what happens.
Yeah. Well, it's Orwellian doublespeak. I mean, Orwell didn't create it, but that's what the propaganda ministers do. It's the doublespeak, the way, like the CNN guy and the Israeli guy. Like, I don't think he was being malicious to the Israeli guy for once, CNN not being malicious to Israel. But you could see just by the way he framed that, he's so ingrained in how to frame things to be emotionally charged. Bodies, they're people. They happen to be dead. Is what the Israeli, something like that. And it's just, that's what they do. Then now it's the headlines. Like, I see things show up and you read the headlines. I look at the comments first, because if it's a bullshit argument, the first few comments are going to be like, this is a waste of time. And that means I know the headline has nothing to do with what's in that, and I'm not interested in reading it. So if you're smart, you don't just click. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people still don't understand how the internet works. Like people, like for example, we have like the Daily Hive or the Vancouver Buzz or whatever the hell they're calling themselves now. What a lot of people don't know is they're a pay-to-access. They're not news. In order to get your business or an event or a thing, you have to pay to be published in that. I only figured out because someone said, hey, we want to do a community piece on you. I forgot which one of them. Oh, yeah, it costs this much. I'm like, the hell? And then you realize that everyone in that's why they're kind of shills for the government right now, because the government's forking out a lot of money to them to get their message out there. And then you realize if people are looking at that as news, it's like, no, that's propaganda. Even if it's honest propaganda, it's still paid, regardless of whatever it is. They're being paid to say something. This is not news. And people just don't know. They don't understand. The comment sections, it's like, this used to be good. This blah, blah, blah. First of all, if you don't support it, why are you commenting in it? Because that gives them money and that gives them attention and they get boosted. Don't comment. Don't engage on internet articles from sources you hate. Like, I still follow them because I want to see what crap they're pushing out, so I have context. But don't engage with idiots. and they all go down. You see Trump's gone, all the CNN's ratings are down like 70%. They might have to actually start doing the news again.
Well, isn't Trump kind of back
Sort
on
of.
tour? So
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I do not want him to run again. I think it's a terrible idea. It's going to make things worse, even though I like his policies. I have no secret about that to anyone, so fuck you if you don't like me for that. He's got a big mouth. I understand what the problem with that is. No problem. But do you understand why people like him? And you can't just say they're idiots, because a lot of very smart people liked him. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I'm suspecting, and actually Ben Shapiro was outright saying they're in a soft civil war right now. So I suspect either California and New York are going to go so broke they can't keep pushing their nonsense that's not based in reality, and they're going to have to stop. Or you're going to see maybe in the next year and a half the American Congress, I think they have their midterms, and it's going to be swept, right? And then they'll just sweep all this. That's why in the next year you're going to see Biden administration shoving everything down everyone's throat, because they think that's going to happen too. And hopefully that'll stabilize stuff, because financially New York and California will be a wreck, and then it'll stabilize. If it doesn't, I'm not sure. I think that you're going to see the breakup of America and Canada. I'm feeling if we keep with this moron as a leader who is just dividing the country, and anyone who thinks otherwise is not paying attention, I don't see any other path for Canada but to break up. It's think you want about Quebec. They're part of our history. But if you want to live completely, I'm for you separating. You can't have a country if you're not going to be unified. And then they're throwing Alberta on the bus. Sorry, Albertans, you needed to diversify your economy years ago. You didn't, and you're fucked now. I do think we should have built the pipelines in the meantime, but they didn't. Alberta's going to want to leave. If I think Trudeau gets in again, even worse, if he gets a majority, they're just going to bail. And then I don't know what BC's going to do, because you might see the entire Western country provinces leave. You might see BC do its own thing. You might see BC stay. Who the hell knows? Here's a story that I found fascinating. So there's a Canadian company from BC called Arcturus, right? Now, a lot of corporations right now are going anti-gun, going full woke, all this stuff. And you said, what the hell is going on? Because half of America does not support that. So either they don't care about that half of America, or they don't care about that, or something else is going on. And I kind of had an aha moment. Arcturus. Now, I don't know if they were serious about this. Arcturus, Canadian company from BC, does military clothing lines, involves with military. There is a trend right now from big corporations not to support anything related to guns. Banks are pulling support from gun stores, etc. I think in America they're going to run into constitutional problems. In Canada, there's no protections. So I think there's just going to be private conservative banks. It's like, what the hell are you guys doing? But anyways, Arcturus, whether it was misinformation or something, was saying we don't support gun stuff. We don't. It's like, and people are like, wait a second, you have a military line. How do you not support gun culture? Well, a few years back in 2017 or 2018, Arcturus was bought up by a European company. Recently, that European company was bought up by
a Chinese
company. That's what's going on. And if you can't realize that's what's going on with this corporate culture, it's that they have been influenced by the Chinese money, and the Chinese strategy is not to beat America and the West with war, because they still can't win that yet. The mistake they'll make is if they try to do it too soon and they get smashed, which they will. It's to break the West up from the inside, and that's what they're doing. They've gotten their money. They're like, Americans like money. They've gotten into the corporate world. And whenever a company gets too much Chinese influence, you start to see these policies come down the loop, because dictators don't like guns, and China wants to see America's power go down. And that's what they're seeing is will America fight them militarily? Because that's going to be a nasty war if it does happen. The West will win that one. Sorry, China. But we'll see what happens. Like, you don't know what the outcome will be. But if it's in 30 years when they've broken up America due to this nonsense infighting, because they've let I'm all for capitalism, but if they've allowed the corruption to get to the point where they can now be undermined by foreign entities with money, and I just like with the Turks thing, which even before it was sold out of Canada, still moved its production to China, which is like assholes. Lululemon got it right. Keep it here, keep it here, keep it here. They still do some stuff in China, but their main stuff is here. So this is why I say, like, as Mayan, self-defense isn't just physical. Because when you start to understand how things work and what's going on, and people like, you see, people, all you people said the vaccines don't work. I didn't entirely say that stuff. There's so much more to this story. I said that we didn't need the vaccines to open up, and I still believe that with like 99% certainty. If you don't understand politics, and you don't understand business, and you don't understand the laws, and you don't understand this, you will be shocked and awed when your country is now screwed over. And I'm a Jew and I need to run, or you're whatever group you need to run, right? And that's, people don't care because it's overwhelming, as you said. And the mental health becomes like nuts. People are losing their minds, right?
It is very overwhelming. And also, like, as we spoke about it in the past, now they think, it's only this group of people, it doesn't concern me. Yeah. But then it becomes the next group of people, and people are still like, nah, that's not me, I don't care. Yeah. But then they will come for you eventually too. Yeah,
there's that Protestant German priest or something who said something like, first they came for the Jews, so it wasn't me. First they came for the whatever. He goes through the list, and then they came for me, and there was no one else left to fight for me.
Yeah.
All right, so when you see, like, in America, the ACLU, civil liberties, fighting for crazy people now and rejecting the Constitution, like, that's terrifying. These groups that are supposed to fight for freedom are no longer doing it because they've been corrupted. And like science, for example. Science in itself is just a thing. It's a process. It's run by humans. Humans are corruptible. Capitalism is just a thing. I still think capitalism is the best thing of all the solutions we've come up with. It's humans that are corruptible. Oh, we got to go away from capitalism because it's corrupt. No. You just have to make it so it's less corruptible. You make the corruption obvious and unacceptable. And that'll only ever happen if you, the public, stand up and say no. But if you don't understand, how are you going to fix it?
Well, it's also personal responsibility. In capitalism, with all the freedom it comes with, people have to understand that they're personally responsible for their own decisions. Yeah. I think that's why maybe socialism or communism is appealing to some people, because decisions are not made by you, they're made by other people.
This is too hard.
Makes it easier.
Easier for those who are unwilling to educate themselves and learn and be better, because that's the hardest thing about being human. Because again, I think we like stable and stable. It was pretty heavy in the last little bit.
I know.
I'm pretty hungry. I don't know about you.
Yeah, slowly getting there. I got up early again because, cat.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't talk about that you think it's important to talk about?
Well, we covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think what's important to me is because right now, again, we have this environment that where people are just yelling at each other on the internet, or not so much in person because people are cowards.
Yeah.
So I would like to see more effort to have a constructive conversation and not just yelling at each other and think, I'm the only one with the right inside, and this whole self-righteousness just drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
And shoving your opinion out, your opinion down other people's throats. I always accept that I might be wrong.
Yeah.
It's not always the best approach, because it's sometimes I need to be more assertive and confident. But again, I learned a long time ago that you think you might be right, but then you find out you're not.
Yeah.
That's always an option. And education. Educate yourselves. Read all kinds of different books. And when the next election comes up, people, please vote.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Be informed voters.
Be informed.
Don't just vote for someone because you have nice hair, because it fucks everyone, okay? Yeah. Informed voters. It's not about whether you like them. I know it's a popularity contest. It doesn't matter whether you like them as a human being. You have to look at their decision-making and their policy, because that's what's going to affect you. Oh, he has a big mouth, he's an asshole. Don't care. That's not what affects you. And if it does, you have a mental health problem, you need to go get that checked.
And are they competent?
Are they competent? Because we currently do not have competent leaders in North America at all. Clown show. Well, I think that's a good place. Do you want people to find you on social media, or do you care?
You can find me very easily just spell my name right.
Yeah.
And then you can find me on Facebook.
Yeah, if you go to our blog, you'll see her. She posts fairly regularly. I think you got some more ones coming up anyway.
I try to write on, but I have a lot of stuff going on. I'm now training us back up. I'm training pretty much 6 days a week.
Well, you'll get it out.
But eventually I will get it out.
They say write every day, like 5 minutes, and you'll get it out eventually.
Exactly. I'm not a very... I'm not... What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not an adversary person. I'm not really looking for conflict.
Yeah.
Having good conversations every day, even with people who disagree with me or I disagree with them.
Yeah.
Just be nice.
Be kind. That's
Be
the trend.
kind.
I'm trying to work on that. Oh yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, and
Thanks
we'll
for having me.
sure hear from you for more in class at least.
I'm sure I will. Thanks.
You're listening to The Warrior's Day. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga. Turning lambs into lions.